July meeting. We normally don't have one, but thank you all for being here, and we'll get started with Pledge of Allegiance. Would everybody stand, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we need to make an amendment to the agenda. We're adding a statement to the community, and I need a motion. Motion by Guy, and a second. And second by Patty. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that was a motion by Guy and second by Patty, and unanimous. Okay, and we just move on to approval now of the agenda. Motion, please.
Make a motion.
I would like to move that we add 2 items to the agenda. As we know, we've talked about a lot, we are trying to establish or affirm the reputation that we're transparent and accountable and want people to be able to see and know what we're doing. And that includes that we follow through with what we've said we would do. And last month, there were 2 items that we agreed to table until next month. That's what we said, table until July. And I don't see either one of those on the agenda. So I would like to move that we add those to the agenda. And then when we get to them on the agenda, if we want to say, we'll have to table those until next month, then we can do that. But since we said we were going to hear them at this month's agenda, I think we should.
But I believe Lori said in July, most people being on vacation here in the office. And we don't remember anything. It's probably the August people who did that.
She did say we won't be able to get everything on the agenda. I went back and watched the video to make sure before I brought this up. She did say we won't be able to get everything on the agenda. And like Lori and I talked about already, you know, that's true, it's very full, so you have to make time and prioritize. I just think it's important to have those on there since we said it'll be on there. And if we want to say, okay, we're going to table those until August, then we can say that then. But since we said last month, we're going to put them on July's agenda, I think we should live up to that. So my motion is to add those 2. I don't know if you need me to specifically say what those 2 are. One of them was the email filtering procedure and policy that we had said we need a written policy detailing when a request can be made. And the second one is, am I going too fast? Sorry, everybody's still writing. And the second one was turning our live stream broadcast into a saved archived video recording.
And we have a motion to add those 2 items. And do we have a second? Okay, motion by Christina, second by Amber. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion by Christina, second by Amber, unanimous to add those to the agenda. Thank you. And now we have our community statement, Vice President Mark Jenkins.
This is a statement that was drafted this
Excuse
afternoon.
me, just a second. I don't think after we have added, we have not approved the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, we need to approve the new agenda as presented with a second amendment. And all in favor?
I'll make the motion.
Oh, motion by Mark and second by Guy. And all in favor? Aye. And any opposed? Any abstentions? And unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And now we will have our board member statement.
Okay, this is a statement that's drafted this afternoon. Dear board, or dear members of the Ozark R6 school community, the board understands that there are multiple interpretations of the letter regarding board liability in individual member sessions. The purpose of this letter was to inform the public that no one board member speaks for the whole and should not be misconstrued as to any board member acting illegally. This statement was approved by the following board members: Sarah Adams, Mark Jenkins, Patty Quisenberry, Amber Bryant, Christina Tonzig, Guy Calloway, with Aaron Johns being absent from the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, we have a request for public comments. And we have Siggy Hill, please. Yes, please.
Okay, I ask you not to start the clock until I start talking.
Okay.
Craig? In reference to your agenda item, community engagement. Okay, I know I'm not the only member in this community who is appalled by the open letter and censure read aloud and entered into the official record of at the expense of a member of our community that was elected to represent us. We find the action of this board in this matter abhorrent, disrespectful of us and our elected representative, and bordering on opening the school to liability. There is a direct contention at the elected official who desired to hear direct from the electorate is somehow doing an American democratic process an injustice. The very insinuation, no direct implication that that American democratic process belongs to an elite core is repugnant on its face and dangerous in its premise. Any elected official who takes or makes the time to hear concerns, suggestions, grievances, or even compliments from those they serve is to be honored and not censured. There is a direct contention that because these meetings are not sanctioned by the board, that they are somehow improper. Aside from the notion that it is inconceivable to us that the board would not sanction meetings between elected officials and those they represent, the idea that the lack of such sanction renders the interaction with an elected official's constituency improper is preposterous in its face. The idea that such sanction is either warranted or necessary strikes right at the heart of constitutional governance. You do not serve the whole board as though it were separate and above the people. You serve the people individually and as a whole board. The very Missouri statute that gives you the power, responsibility, and authority to govern every aspect of the school district intends that power and authority to the people to represent. You govern still at the consent of the governed. We need not sanction, discourage, nor censure such a meeting, so you have no power nor authority to do so. More troubling is your direct quote from an appellate case factually used out of context to insinuate that this meeting is somehow improper. I quote, "Unless otherwise authorized by the board, individual members are not empowered to act and cannot govern." A thorough reading of the case clearly indicates the opposite of what you imply, because no member of the board has any legal authority. Any meetings, contacts, or listening sessions they conduct are not subject to the law you quote as outlawing them. In fact, because no three members of this board constitute the body of the whole, no meeting between them is subject to any of the stipulations of Missouri open meeting law. So any two of you might volunteer to join Christina at the next listening session without any concerns, and in fact with the encouragement of the case law you quote. I encourage you to do so. But the most troubling aspect of this public censure is the direct implication that Christina Tonsing broke some law. Your citation of her by name, her proper and specific act, and the case law mentioned leave a clear and intended impression on the community of taxpayers who may or may not know better that some law has been broken. Since you refuse to name your abhorrent paper as censure, here's the definition. As a noun, strong, vehement expression of disapproval. An official reprimand as a legislative body to one of its members. As a verb, to criticize, to reproach in a harsh or vehement manner, to give censure, adverse criticism, disapproval, or blame. So your abhorrent paper with your signatures on it is a censure by the very definition of the word. It named a specific legislator by name, it announced disapproval of the specific action, and it strongly implied illegality. Nothing a single school board member says or does can carry liability to the board, according to the very case you quoted in the censure. Further, the censure cannot be anything Christina might say. It is clearly about Christina might hear from constituents. A huge fear in this board for obvious reasons. This is proven by the fact that the censure goes to great lengths to explain the appropriate ways to constitute for constituents to communicate with the board. You refused, Christina, to hear the district's residents, but I was offered by Sarah Orr and Mark Jenkins in a personal message that they would like to meet with me. How is that different from Christina Tonsing's effort to hear from the district's community? It has come to my attention that Patty Christenberry is distributing an opinion in the communities, quote, how much this school board hates Christina Tonsing. Where are your board ethics? The interim superintendent, Lori Wilson, publishes inquiries by the public with their names and email addresses. That's called doxing. All these actions combined are slanderous, libelous, and likely criminal. It is also dereliction of your duty of truth and good governance and a knowing or unknowing act of malfeasance by a government body. If it is done in ignorance, you are now informed. By the end of the next board meeting, we expect either an indictment of the crimes you contend or an open retraction of the censure, an apology to the member Christina Tonsing and the violated school district community. Failing this, we will file a lawsuit in behalf of the taxpayers who elected you. Thank you for your time. And this is just a start. Just stay tuned and don't lie to me. And also, I want to remark that I sent an email to each of your board members. And Amber, Mark, and Patty chose not to enter. What kind of respect is that to the community that elected you? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have student employee survey presentation.
All right, I guess we're up, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Hello.
so go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yep, thank you. Studer, yes, you're next.
All
Please
right.
proceed. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time
Oh,
tonight.
Yes,
We're
ma'am.
glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So we are Studer Education. We actually got started. I'm going to give you a little history real quick. My name's Richard Fessel. You want to go to the next slide? Is the slide able to advance?
We're working on it.
All right,
Okay.
it's okay.
Well, while
Well,
we're waiting, you
Yeah,
can
I'll go ahead and
yourselves.
I'll introduce myself. So my name's Richard Fessel, and I'm the director over the surveys, and I also do coaching on the side too. So I wear many hats inside the organization. But before we get started, I'd just like to tell you a little bit of history behind Studer Education, and it's a great story. So the way we got started was our two founders, Dr. Janet Pilcher and Dr. Robin Larg, came up with an alt certification program where in the state of Florida, you would be able to go ahead and take our program. It's a 9-month program. When you got out, you took your subject area test and in the regular test to become a teacher. You would then get a 5-year teaching certificate. So we branched out from Florida into all states except Wisconsin, New York, and Kentucky. So we're still in that business now, but in the meantime, we started up with the surveys, and it's pretty unique what we do. So we'll run surveys. After the surveys get ran, depending on what the contract is, we'll send in a coach who will actually coach the superintendent on how the results were and how to increase your results. And it's kind of the bottom line, but we're all over the United States, as you can see on the present slide. If you want to go to the next one, please. So yes, that's me. I have a doctorate in education from the University of West Florida. And I've been with Studer Education since the beginning. I was actually hired in by Dr. Janet Pilcher, one of the founders I just spoke about, at the University of West Florida, and I was a research associate for over 20 years with Dr. Pilcher. And then when I thought I was going to retire, she asked me if I wanted to come work part-time, and that lasted about 3 months till the tap on the shoulder, and I became full-time. So if you want to go next, please.
Hi,
Michelle.
I'm Michelle Tate. I work with Richard on our survey team. And I went to College of William and Mary, and then I have a Master's of Science in Administration from the University of West Florida. And so I help Richard and our other coaches with the survey administration. So glad to be here, and we can go to the next slide.
And she does an excellent job. Thank you, Michelle. So we live by the 9 principles that we developed for our framework. And Michelle and I got together and we checked off, you'll see the green checks next to one's principle 2, 3, 5, and 7. And these are the ones that we devoted to you and to Ozark. And you can look these over. We can always send you the PowerPoint presentation if you want. But we like to look at, make sure we're measuring the most important things, build a culture around the service, focus on employee engagement, align behaviors with goals and values. And then we recognize, and the last one we should add it in there, we recognize the reward and success of getting these results back to you on time. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So we have different surveys that we've been running for the past 10 years. We have a district support services, what we call the DSS, an employee experience survey, a parent survey, and a student surveys. And we have other surveys that we run for different schools too. Next. So hit next again, please. So you'll see things pop up. So keep hitting next. So one of the things that we do, we like to measure, and then we like to put value to what we measure. And one of the greatest ones that we do is the district services, the DSS, and the employee experience. It's where the employees and the leaders get their chance to put their input into how well they think their school and their organization is running. Next. So some of the measurable important things that we look at inside our surveys is the people themselves, and with the district services, we look at service, the timing. So we'll run different surveys at different times. We can run the surveys in the fall and then again in the spring. And then sometimes we like to do it, and we will every once in a while do it with a real quick pilot study just to see where we're at. It's a completely online survey. It is absolutely anonymous. We do not capture IP addresses. This is one of the questions we receive from a lot of people. Can you track who I am? No, we do not, and we cannot track who you are. Next. So, like again, the best place to work on employee experience surveys, that's what that's answering. Next. And next again. And the service, serving others, that's the district service survey. It's kind of really neat because it'd take the different functionalities within inside the school system, and we can look and see how well, you know, the IT group is, maintenance, HR, so forth and so on.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. And Michelle, you want to take it from here?
I do. So the first survey that we'll go over is the district services survey, just the logistics, breaking down the measurements, and a sample survey. So if we could go to the next slide. Basically, it is showing your departments how well they provide services to other leaders within the district. For example, IT, human resources, facilities, maintenance. Those are always common departments where we try to receive feedback. And so on the next slide, it describes the 5 dimensions that we are looking at: accessibility, accuracy, attitude, operations, and timeliness. Basically, we want to know, and we think it's important for the district leaders to know, you know, if you call up IT, how hard is it to get a hold of someone? When they do, you know, work with you, are they giving you the right answer? Are you getting it quickly? Is it running smoothly and easily? And so on the next slide, it's just a basic overview. So you rate them 1 to 5, 1 being a low score, 5 being a high score. And then if you have not had interactions with a particular department over about 45 days, you just put NA. That doesn't affect their score. And then the next slide is provides an opportunity for comments. So, you know, you can say, hey, the superintendent's office is doing a great job. You know, we're really pleased with this. Or if there's room for improvement, you can put that on there. So that's basically how the district services survey works. It's to make sure that you are making sure that your internal customers are happy. Typically we do this survey with principals, assistant principals, sometimes administrative staff, because they're the ones that pick up the phone and call facilities and say, hey, we need help with this. And a lot of times we also include district leaders. So that is the district services survey. The next slide is just an overview of the employee experience survey. Same thing, logistics, breaking down the measurements and sample survey. So if we go to the next slide, this is an opportunity for your employees to give feedback on, what's working well, what could be improved, and it helps the employee experience and shows, this is how people feel about their daily work life. And it's a way to recognize the things that are doing well and see, okay, this is what our people are telling us is a problem. And so it's a great opportunity to help build the culture and provide an opportunity for continuous improvement. And so we offer the opportunity to have different schools and departments. So, it's really easy. If someone works at the elementary school, they pick their elementary school. Whereas if it's someone that works, depending on the size of a district, we'll tell them, sometimes they break their finance department down into multi-levels, and then other times it's a smaller district. And so we say, let's put all finance together, because you need at least 5 people in a specific department to create an individualized report, because that's one of the core things is we want to make sure that we can preserve that anonymity. Because if you've got one person that does accounts payable, and you can filter it by accounts payable, then that person's going to feel really vulnerable because all of their answers are going to be obvious to everyone. Whereas if you've got all of finance together, then people can speak more freely and give you that honest feedback that is so critical. So on the next slide, we've got a typical an overview of the survey. There are 10 immediate work environment items, 4 organization, 4 communication, 2 why/culture, 2 net promoter, which I'll go into, and 3 open-ended questions. So that is the basic survey that we give to every single partner that does an employee engagement or employee experience survey. And we are working on benchmarking that we can provide next month that will show this is how Ozark compares to our partners across the country. This is how Ozark, we'll get to the point later in the fall, we'll release a study and say, you can look and see this is how Ozark compares to your other Missouri schools. So on the next slide, we've got the 20 basic questions. And if anybody would like for us to share that, we can. As you see, they start with I believe. We moved to this format this year because it's more about how people feel about their individual experience. It's not based on what the rumor mill says or, well, I think this, but everybody else says this. No, this is how they feel. The 2 questions that I like to look at the most are, I believe my work positively impacts those we serve, number 19, and number 20, I feel a sense of pride when I tell people where I work, because at the end of the day, you want people that are making a positive impact, that believe they're making a positive impact, and they're proud to tell other people that they work at Ozark. So those are critical questions to look at. On the next slide, we've got questions that are specifically added for the Ozark School District. The first 3 were asked of all the employees. They are the ones that your state legislature requires that you ask all employees every year. And then the next questions were specifically for your learning division team members and for the administrators, based on Marzano and based on the PLC approach, to make sure that that work that's being done, people can say how they're feeling about their experiences in that learning division. So we have that data. And then on the next slide, we have the open-ended questions. We've got what's working well at your organization, what areas in your organization can be improved, and who would you like to recognize for supporting you in your work. On the next slide, we have our net promoter score. And so for the net promoter question, they are very similar questions. This just gives you an overview. So you are asked how likely are you to recommend your organization as a good place to work? That is Ozark School District as a whole. And the next question is, how likely are you to recommend your immediate work environment as a good place to work? And yes, those sound very, very similar, but they are actually different, because you want to know, if someone works at the middle school, you want to know that they like working at the middle school every day. And then on the organization, it's about Ozark. So there are differences because that's how people are. And so that question, unlike the other questions on the survey, is ranked on a 0 to 10 Likert score. And 9s and 10s are your promoters. They're the most avid, enthusiastic supporters. They love Ozark, telling everybody about it. 7s and 8s are your passives. They are a fan, but they're not telling everyone. And 0 to 6 are your detractors. They are unhappy and dissatisfied, and they are letting people know. And yes, 0 to 6 is a broad range, but studies have shown that people tend to rate you a little bit higher than they really feel. The way we calculate net promoters, we take your 9s and 10s, those promoters, and we subtract out your detractors, those 0 to 6s. Your score can range anywhere between -100 and 100. Anything over a 0 is to be celebrated because that means you have more promoters than you have detractors. And you'll see we've got a range right there. If you go to the next slide, it's got a little bit of information. So one of the things about Net Promoter is it's universal. It's done by all these big companies. You'll see Google's got a 36, Walt Disney's got a 19, Apple 19, Starbucks 10. For Ozark, for how likely are you to recommend Ozark as a good place to work, you're a 14.45. So you're better than Starbucks. Then if you ask how likely are you to recommend your immediate work environment as a good place to work, you've got a 28.61. So you are right up there above Walt Disney and above Apple. Those are really strong scores. And yes, you'll see a difference. I used to work in politics. So one of the ways I relate to it is if you ask people how they feel about Congress as a whole, the way people, a lot of times are more negative about Congress as a whole than they are if you ask how their immediate member of Congress is doing, because they're like, oh, I love my Congresswoman. She's always doing this. Or my member of Congress, he's always pushing forth good legislation. But Congress, ugh. So that's, to be expected. But again, you guys have really good scores. So those are very, very strong scores. On the next slide, it's just an overview of the survey cycle, the feedback loop. So basically what happens next is we've got the survey results that have been shared with Dr. Wilson and some of the assistant superintendents. And so she will look into those, we'll work with her, and then we share the results. So that'll be done at a cadence where it's rolled out to the leadership, and then you start to work on an action plan of these are things that we're doing really well. These are things that we need to continue doing well. And then there's a list of these are items that need to be improved. And this is where you come up with an action plan to improve those items. And then you just continue to monitor and see that there's progress being made. And then on the last slide, it's got, just kind of reflecting on it, determining what steps to do, improving on it, and implementing those improvements that are identified, and then just monitoring and seeing how things are going. So that's the end of our presentation. Are there any questions for us or anything that we need to clarify?
Any questions or comments from the board or administrators? Okay.
It'll either be in August or September
Okay.
after we have conversations with them and we learn more. Yes, he will.
Will that be you doing that or Studer?
Did Studer do that in the past?
So do they present to you?
Yes. Yes, we will have a meeting with them and they will present to us.
And we're happy to work with Dr. Wilson.
I'm sorry.
I just said we were happy to work with you because we know it's a new role, and so we're looking forward to working with you on the results, and anything we can do to help, we're happy to do.
They will present to us and we will report back to you.
We will also go through our process, so we will work with the people who are underneath us as well. And so we'll roll out the results to the learning division. And so we'll roll out the results to our divisions as well. So we'll report up to you all. We'll report down the learning to our own divisions.
Sure. How about now? So I have a little bit of a question about the anonymity being preserved.
Thank you. So I have a little bit of a question about the anonymity. So it's going to be completely impossible to tell who the different responses were. So like, I think that is going to influence how people answer it. And I don't know if it needs to be directed toward Dr. Wilson or one of the presenters maybe, but that is going to matter if it's completely anonymous. Anybody want to answer that?
I'm not exactly sure what the question is.
They're
So
already
this survey-
working on that.
yeah,
I liked,
this-
she talked about that a little bit. I was just checking because we've received another opinion saying that they won't be anonymous, and that's why board members can't look at the comments, because I think looking at the comments is one of the most helpful things. And so, but if they're guaranteeing it's going to be anonymous, then it won't be any problem.
So if I may say something, the survey results are anonymous. So when we look at those results that people send in, we can't tell you if Bob from accounting said something and Sue from HR said something else. But there are times where people have made remarks that do identify themselves in the comments, because it's either writing style, or if they make references to a specific incident that only a few people are aware of, there is an opportunity where someone can inadvertently disclose who they are without saying, like, I'm Bob from accounting. But there are instances, of course, where the comments can reveal who said something. But as far as the raw numbers go, we don't know who said what or responded what, and it is anonymous, so people, can respond freely and know that, we can't identify who said what. But in the comments, people can unwittingly or wittingly reveal themselves.
So is that what keeps us from being able to all be there when you make the presentation to the administration about the results? When Studer presents to the administration, can board members be invited to hear that presentation as well?
I believe in the past, what we have done is it's been presented to us, and then we will present you the themes and the information.
Yeah, I was asking if we could do it differently this time.
We can have that discussion. I need to go back, just like you have further research.
Right.
And to look at that. At this point, I'm not ready to say that, because I need to see what they're going to present. So at this point, I would say no, but if it is a vote of the board that you want to sit in that, then that would be something that you would direct us to do, and you would need to let us know that. Yes, absolutely.
Studer, when you're doing these surveys for schools, do you normally present to the board?
No, we don't. We go back to the partner. It's usually the superintendent, and we roll out the results to them and any of their employees that they have in there, like district superintendent, so forth and so on.
So, okay. It's just hard to think that we would not be getting that information to see recurring themes that are problems. That's my thoughts.
Yeah,
I'm not interested in reading individual. I'm not interested in reading individual comments. I'm interested in seeing the overall survey results.
Absolutely, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
It is the reading of the individual comments.
And
I don't want to. I mean, there's a way that you should be. Sorry. I do surveys, and there should be a way that you present that in a summary that without identifiers to still show the theme.
Absolutely, yes.
there is.
So
Yes, and you will have that. Yes.
Yeah, so we do that two different ways in the past. So you'll get the total. In the past, we've given the total without comments. And then you'll see it also in the scorecard, those numbers that we were looking at earlier. The accountability and all of that is 100% the Studer score by department. So you'll get the overall results, no comments. And in the scorecard, it shows up where the community gets to see those scorecards as well.
When we do a Studer rollout for my department, then I will have all the people right underneath me. So be all the principals, assistant principals, and then the people in district office that are learning division. So we look at all the results, and then we look at the themes of the comments, and we talk through then, based on these results and the themes of the comments, what kind of action plan do we need to do to work on the pieces that need to go up. What can we celebrate based on last year in the data? And then we also, I will specifically handwrite notes. If in the comments, Dr. Wilson was congratulated for the way she did something and they fell in the learning division, then I will handwrite notes to anyone that's mentioned personally and just congratulate them for whatever that is in my comment section. But I share all the themes of what we see and we share all the data with them. And then as a department, we create an action plan based on that.
And we will share all the themes with you. Absolutely.
Okay, I have a question about it, about not seeing the comments or not seeing the details. I can understand that, but my thing is comments, if they're surveying our employees about the superintendent, I think that we, the board, hire our superintendent. That's one duty that we have. I think we should see the results of that survey if those comments regard our superintendent, because we are responsible for addressing him or her in their improvement.
Sure.
Where you, as the upper administrators, you're responsible for the principals, the teachers, and down.
That's good.
I understand the chain of command. But for us as board members, we should at least in the results.
That's good. Wait.
And even though the superintendent is different right now, I still think it's important to see where things were going well and where things needed improvement.
Good.
And as the employee for the board, I would agree with that. Absolutely.
And who compiles those trends? Studer does that?
Yes, Studer does that.
Okay.
Yes.
Studer compiles the results. We look at the comments
That's what I was
and
asking.
determine. So when you look at, so if you're going to see past superintendent's comments, then you would develop the themes out of that. When I
Right.
work with my departments, we talk about the themes that they see. Dr. Wilson and I will talk about, hey, here's the themes that I see in yours, and I'll add my thoughts as well.
Good. And as we've discovered, different people interpret comments in different ways. So it's good to have more than just one person looking at those comments and developing the themes.
And one question I have, because I know we've done, was this our 4th survey with Studer, correct?
I believe it's the third.
The 3rd. But anyway, with doing that, don't you look at the trends for us? In other words, and we should be looking at that too, from the first one, say in 21, the second one in 22, the third one in 23, are we improving? Or
Yes.
if things were not well or whatever, are we seeing our district improve by these surveys? Do we pull that together as a summary?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, we do. And so what we'll do, we do historical data over time. So when a report comes out, you'll see the results from 2021, and then you'll see a column with the results from 2022 all the way up to where you're at now.
And
you
that's
get
what
the
I was meaning
overall-
about them presenting the themes too, is that they will
Yeah.
give us all of that data.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
The intent is the intent is to be transparent with the data. You will not grow and you will not improve unless you know where you're at and how to address the issues.
And I think the other thing that will be helpful is once we have that benchmarking data, which we'll go over with Dr. Wilson, you can see how you're doing compared to, our partners across the country. Because I think that's also helpful, just having that background. Since we did refresh the questions this year, there were some fluctuations in scores this year because of those changes.
And that's our last survey with Studer, or are we having another contract, or where are we at with that?
We will have conversations about that. I cannot tell you that right now, just because I'm unaware.
Well, but we don't have any more left now.
I don't think we have. Do we have any? I don't think we have any more left.
We don't.
Yes.
No, you don't, but we would love to continue with
Oh,
you.
I'm sure. Yeah, I know. I just wondered where we were at.
And we have other surveys too. We'll send to the superintendent, and you guys can look at what surveys they are. You may want to run one, and
It's important to have the same question.
yeah, yeah.
I have one more comment or question.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
know you gave us the rankings for a few other companies of how likely are you to recommend this organization is a good place to work, and we scored 14.45.
Mhm.
compared to those other companies that were on the list, the 4 of
Mhm.
them, that was pretty close to average. But when you were showing on the slide just before that, the
Mhm.
interpretations of the scores, 0 to
Mhm.
30, it says good performance, opportunity for improvement, 30 to
Yes.
50, strong, sustainable growth. So,
Mhm.
so both of ours were, it goes up to 100. 50 to 100 was the good one. So both of ours have room to grow.
Yes, I'm pulling up one thing really quickly. So again, this was the first year that we've asked those net promoter item questions. So we will have the full impact of them, but based on 18 partners that we did a round of surveys with in the fall of 2022, we administered those surveys to 8,906 stakeholders over 18 partners. And the first question, how likely are you to recommend this organization as a good place to work? The individual partners ranged from negative 28.34 to 42.12, and the average partner score was 12.69. So you were above the average based on these fall numbers. And then for the immediate work environment question, the individual partner scores ranged from negative 5.04 to 49. And the average score was 23.49. So again, your score for the immediate work environment was better than average for those initial 18 partners that we did the survey for.
Good.
But we will have the benchmarking data that, for all of our partners across the country that we did the survey with this past 2022-2023 school year. So
Good.
that I think will help. But again, y'all were better than our average. So I think that's good, and that's to be celebrated, especially with, I know, a number of changes that occurred over this past year.
Thank you for those numbers. I just wondered, do you
course.
happen to have the median there, since you had the total number? And I just wondered, I bet you have the mean, median, and the mode too. Do you have the
I
median?
don't have the mean, median, and mode. I
okay,
can
that's-
I can
I
ask
just
our
wondered,
data.
that's fine.
I can ask our data guru, Karen, if she has those, but we just have the average scores.
That's fine. A lot of times the median gives a better, truer representation than average, but that's fine. Thank you.
And next year, as we look to provide the surveys again, we will definitely review how they were set or how they were given, the timeframes when they should be given. Should not give 2 surveys at one time. So there are some things that we can do better with those surveys, and that we will work on that.
And another thing is to communicate to the staff that this is coming, maybe 2 weeks out. This is coming, we're doing a survey, it's anonymous, done by Studer, but get that out there to
Yeah,
them
sure.
to know that it is coming.
Good.
Absolutely.
Oh, say it again.
I'm really bad about the microphone. I said, I even have notes here that we definitely do communicate it better. We need to send out emails if we do huddles, flyers, and we should have a champion in each building talking about what a good thing it's going to be and how it is anonymous, like a promoter in each building.
Oh, those are great ideas.
We will work on that, absolutely.
Yeah, HR person.
And the email link that might be, the email address will look like this or something of that nature.
Times and saying, and then you can put even who is running it so they can look into them and realize that it is an anonymous response.
Good.
Any other?
And what she was saying, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask.
What she was saying about the email, I guess they sent it to the board that this was happening, but when I saw you first come up, your email address, somebody's email address will be there, and I thought, who the heck is that? And so I even had some teachers tell me they saw it and thought it was scam or something, so they just deleted it. They didn't know it was coming from a.
That was an email from me, I guess. So I apologize if it looks like spam, but one of the things we can do is send an email template for Dr. Wilson to use, or someone else from the district to send out to employees, just alerting them and letting them know that you'll see an email from me or someone else from Studer with the results. So we can definitely help with that improvement. And we've already talked to Dr. Wilson about spacing out the surveys this coming school year so that one's done in the fall, one's done in the spring. So it's not so overloaded and it's a more optimal time of year for those. And
Yeah,
Richard?
we can also have the email that comes out with the link to take the survey from anybody's address, such as Dr. Wilson's or whoever's. So that helps too. So it doesn't say who's this, you know.
So I guess that shows that our tech department, yes,
Yeah.
shout out.
Shout
We
out.
are always getting emails.
Yeah.
Is this a real email or is it not? Do you click on it or do you not? And so if some did not click on it because they thought it was phishing, kudos to the tech
Yeah.
department.
Yep.
All right, any more questions or comments? Or I see somebody with their hand up. Are we allowed to take
No.
any, we can't by state law have public comment at a school board meeting, is that right? Public comment is at first, could you sign
not
up
really
to
state law.
speak at the next? Oh, yeah, I can ask, how much does this cost? Yeah. Can't discuss that, okay, I'm sorry.
Is this a bid? Is this a bid, or we've already decided we're going to use them? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's sunshineable. A person who wanted to know could write in and ask with a sunshine request, and they would be sent the invoice.
If you will send me an email, I will find out that information and I'll send it to you. Okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
I can,
Thank you.
And thank you, Studer, for being here tonight, so.
Oh, thanks for the invite. We appreciate it. Thanks for everything you guys do for us too.
You as well, have a wonderful night.
Okay,
Thank
yes,
you,
ma'am.
you too.
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
And our presentation will be in September or October, is that what?
August or September.
August or September, okay, thank you. Next, we have setting the tax rate presentation.
Mr. Kinder, that's you. No, we are not setting the tax rate,
Yes.
but I know that we had some new board members that may like to see this information prior to that date.
Yes, hello, how are you doing? My name is Joe Kinder. I think I'm going to speak later in the meeting too, is that right? Okay, great. So what I do for my day job is help you all with your financing needs in terms of when you go out to do larger building projects and need to borrow money, as some of you know. But some of the things that tangentially we've gotten involved in include tax rates, just because this is a very unique calculation or set of calculations. And recent years, it has gone from being all done by hand to being done in a portal online through the state auditor. So we don't get a lot of information or feedback from the state auditor like we used to, and we don't have those open lines of communication. Now, we can still communicate with the state auditor and ask questions, but the timing of that is a little bit less convenient than we would like it to be. So what we like to do is get involved with folks' tax rates. I've done, or at least looked at, close to 2,000 at this point in my career, and your administration, you all do it once a year. So we just like to lend a little bit of our expertise to this. And so when you think about your tax rate, it's important to remember that really it's just, the tax rate is simply a way to equitably decide how to bill your constituents within your community for a revenue amount you're allowed to collect. So even though this is local revenue, you really don't have any power or much power as a board on how you set that levy. You really are conscripted by what the state allows you in terms of your revenues. So this year is a reassessment year. What does that mean? That means that every 2 years in the state of Missouri, assessors are required to look at existing property and make evaluations on what the value of that property is. And for you all, the value of the property within your community is what drives your local tax revenues. We get an amount that we can levy. We levy that on those taxpayers. They pay their tax bills, and that is your local tax revenue as it comes in the door. So there are some things that come with reassessment years. Sometimes that can result in changes in your rate, depending on what happens. This particular year, Christian County, even though we've been suffering through some inflation here, Christian County has done a nice job in the past of keeping up with inflation in terms of their assessments. When I say that, I don't have any data to give you. I only have anecdotal data, but I can tell you that 66 counties, so about 60% of the counties in the state, are under some form of surveillance by the State Tax Commission right now for their delinquency or their lack of accuracy or equitability in their assessments. Christian County is not one. And so if we have large reassessment, one of the things that these calculations are designed to do is essentially stop a windfall, what they call a windfall in revenue to districts. So if you have a huge growth in the value of your existing property, so anything new that goes online, you get to tax as normal. But when you see an increase in your value from existing properties that is in excess of either the CPI or 5%, whichever one is greater. This year it happens to be 5%, first time in my career that the CPI is above the 5% cap. We have to adjust that tax rate because, again, we're capped on our revenues. We're only allowed to recoup 5% additional revenue on your existing real property. So anything above that, we adjust by lowering your tax rate. That is strictly for your operation side of things. So that is just that larger 80% or so of your levy, 75% of your levy of that 318.38. Your debt service levy is different. That's what's called an ad valorem tax. So your debt service levy can only be used to pay bricks and mortar debt. You cannot get any money in there with the exception of a couple different revenue streams that you have. But for the most part, 95% of your revenue in your debt service fund is coming from that local tax rate, that 95.9562 per $100 of assessed value. That is used to pay off your bricks and mortar debt, can only be used to do that, and really is the only form of revenue is local taxes. So those are the two different ways that those levies generally are set. Well, sorry, so when we say ad valorem tax power, that means you are required by state law as a board to levy a tax sufficient to make your payments. So you are not allowed to not make the payments on your general obligation debt. And the levy itself is the security. So when we think about our mortgage, the security on our mortgage is our home. In this case, the security that we offer to investors in your bonds is the ad valorem tax power of the board. So in other words, your state mandate to actually pay that. How do we come up with a number for your total overall levy? You all have, for as long as I've worked with you, for at least 16 years, kept your levy at the 4.14 as a total number. So regardless of how the calculation comes out, we have balanced that number out to maximize the amount of operating revenue you get. So we focus on operating revenue. Again, that's a decision that you all make, but that has been the MO of the board in the past and most boards in the state. And then we use the remainder to dedicate to your debt service. Your debt service levy is designed for you to be able to go back out to your capacity. So when I say capacity, I mean that you have two different ways that we can think about your bonding capacity. The first way is, what are you able to make payments on? Can you actually afford the debt? And that levy is set and designed to allow you, if you're growing quickly, every 4 to 6 years, but if you're not really growing, even without growth, it's designed every 5 to 7 years for you to be able to do what's called a no tax rate increase bond issue. So an extension of your levy to pay debt is essentially what it's designed to do. So it is actually generating a little bit more revenue over 20 years than you need to make payments. Right, wrong, or indifferent, the way that we do things in Missouri is that we have this idea, this notion of a no tax rate increase. In places like Kansas, their debt service fund looks a lot like your special revenue fund. So you start with $0, you end with $0, you levy only what you need to make the payments. So literally every bond issue that you run is a tax increase. A little bit different in Missouri. And so we custom design levies, and of course your voters have to approve those, but we custom design those with that in mind, with the idea that because people are used to this no tax rate increase, the extension of the levy over time, that's how we address our facilities. That doesn't mean you can't run a tax increase, you certainly can. But that's just how that levy comes to be. How did it get to be 95 cents? That's generally where it was voted. You know, again, we kind of let that thing float within a couple pennies. And in fact, was it 2 years ago? We actually went to a vote of the people, or you did, to shift some of that debt service levy into operations. So that's something you have to ask your voters if you're going to change that mix of revenue, at least back into the operating side of things. If you're going to move some over into debt, I mean, you roll 25 to 30 cents off of your debt every single year off of your debt service levy. So you have the ability to levy more, but you keep it at that 4.14. So having said that, your assessed value this year, if we isolate out what's happening, is there a second page to that, Doctor? There we go. So this is a calculation for the Form A summary. This is how to calculate your operating levy, okay? So we have tried to, on that reference side of things, let you know what that calculation is. We used to actually get hard copy paper that we would write this in on. We no longer see that, and in fact, there are not many portions, and the yellow is actually coded for our folks that help us with these calculations to know what they should be hard keying and what they should not. So ignore that yellow. But there are not very many variables that you have control over, nor do you put into the state auditor's portal. So we give you this to give you an idea of how that calculation is being spit out. But what essentially we're doing is we're taking your assessed value this year, which is line 1, and coming up with a new construction number. And if this is boring you or you are having trouble sleeping, you can call me tonight and I'll give you that information as opposed to now. But we get a new construction number from the clerk themselves or from the assessor themselves on your real property. But as you know, we also tax personal property in Missouri. There is no function, even if the assessor gives you that number, we don't use that number. The state auditor, for their purposes, just takes the difference between last year's personal property value and this year's personal property value to determine new construction. So it's kind of a bit of a fiction, right? Personal property depreciates over time. So it's really not all the new construction. We're only getting some of it. We're just getting the difference, whoever's replaced above and beyond the value you had before. That number comes to 26 million. So we back that out to get what we think the value of your existing property has done according to the assessor, which is line 4 there. We look at line 5 and the difference, and we get a difference in assessed value on existing property of 5.16%. So a little over that 5% cap we talked about. And so the way that we adjust that, or the way that the state auditor adjusts that form, again, because we're talking about a revenue amount for you all. We're not talking about a levy rate. We're really calculating your revenue. So you're allowed that 5% growth, but that's the cap on the growth you can get in local revenue from existing property. So you'll end up with a slightly lower levy of what is that, 10 thousandths of a dollar per $100 of assessed value. So a small adjustment there. You always have a lot of assessed value at almost $700 million. What that means for you in revenues, on the first page, there's a number that is new revenue from reassessment, but we tried to give you a real new revenue number there. So your delta there is about 1.6, just shy of $1.7 million of additional local revenue coming in. And that'll be a mix between that 5% increase in existing property values and then that $26 million worth of new construction that's gone on the rolls. And so this is a function that you do every single year as a board, but particularly in these odd numbered years, we always want to make sure we get in front of you and talk to you about what reassessment is and what it means, particularly when we're having this high inflationary environment. There was a long time where you weren't really seeing a whole lot of movement in your levy. We're still not really seeing it, but you are seeing some significant growth in reassessment at over 5%. So I just wanted to give you the idea on where that comes from and how we come up with that calculation. And then really we're just relaying information to you, that sample tax rate hearing notice. Again, you don't have a lot of power over that. The maximum amount you could levy in your operating is likely going to be that 3.1838. We will wait, hopefully, until as late as we can in August. You have to have that to the county clerk by September 1st. But we want to give ourselves as much time as possible to get information in. We have what's called a Board of Equalization process where people can, if they disagree with their evaluation, go in and have an informal process with the actual assessor and the county themselves. We also have in Missouri for corporations, everything you see in front of you, if this was a for-profit company, would be personal property. The paper, the name tags, the gavel, the computers, and they are responsible, those companies, for self-reporting. And oftentimes they will get behind and not do that. So Newton County is a great example of that. Neosho School District usually gets their numbers from, I think it's the Tyson plant in about mid-August. And so their assessed value usually goes up about $15 or $20 million overnight, but it's just because they're getting those values reported to them late. So we want to take as much time as we can to get that information in. So this is just a preview of what we think it would look like if you don't have any change through all of that, all those processes. But just kind of wanted to walk through the tax rate since we got some new folks and it's a reassessment year and we've got all kinds of fun going on. So take any questions you might have, but that's a preview of what it will likely look like. No change in your overall rate, but certainly some additional operational revenues coming in the door.
Thank you so much. That's great information. And now's your chance for questions and to nerd out about taxes. So, yeah.
And we will come back in August with this. It may be this number, it may be a little higher, it may be a little lower, but we will come back in August, in the August meeting to set the tax rate.
And board policy doesn't have to be the same every year. So if you decide that you don't want to do the 4.14, I mean, there's limits again on what you can do, but that's not set in stone. So you have that option to discuss and certainly wanted to give you that option. Yes, ma'am.
And you said already that there's increase over 5% already. There's expected revenue increase.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
good. Just from property value growth, just from.
That's right, just on
reassessed
existing
and
property
new,
value growth.
yeah.
Some I'm sure is due to inflation, and some of it is due to, at least in Kansas City, we're here, I had heard from a realtor not too long ago at a chamber meeting that it was due to a lot of people moving from higher cost of living states to Missouri in the wake of COVID and some of the virtual meetings. And so some people are moving here and driving up home prices.
That's good. And we don't have to raise the levy, maybe even.
Thank you again.
Thank you. I'll see you here in a little
Go
bit.
Chiefs, Kansas City. I thought it was the Ozark shirt, but it's Kansas City.
I knew I was
so,
coming
yeah.
here, so I didn't want to wear my
Almost time.
red tonight.
Yeah,
but
I'm glad you did. Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
want to send me an Ozark polo, I'll gladly take one.
Send him home with the Ozark Tiger shirt. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kinder.
Thank you. I'll see you in a little bit.
And next, we need an approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion? Motion by Patty. And a second? Second by Guy. All in favor?
Oh, wait, is there a discussion on that? I have a question about those
Sure.
minutes. Did
Yeah.
those minute amendments that I sent in get corrected? I did not get to look at them today, all 4 of them.
They were corrected to what we believe is correct. So yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, all in favor? Raise your aye. Any opposed?
Go ahead.
Any abstention?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, so 1 abstaining by Christina Tonsing, and motion passes. Thank you. New business?
Point of order, Madam President. Are you going to do old business right now, those 2 that
Did I
we
miss
decided
one?
on? I don't know when you wanted to do it, but I was thinking it would probably be, yeah.
Okay. Old business, did I miss one? Approval?
We added.
Old business wasn't on there.
Okay. Oh, sure, yeah. So do we want to go to email filtering policy next? Sure, go ahead. Yeah, please.
We had talked about it last month at great length. There was a long presentation, and we focused in again on the one last slide about requests for individual district patron emails. That didn't fit in any of the other ones, any of the other necessary filtering things, spam, phishing, all that stuff. That last one, are you guys with me? Are you remembering what I'm talking about? The last slide talked about individual requests by the superintendent or a vote of the board. And I had made that motion, and so we decided to table that until this month. And so I would like us to bring that back up and either decide to discuss it now and finish it. I mean, there needs to be a written policy about how that is done. We either can finish it now, or if you guys want to say we're going to table it till next month, we can vote on that. But we need to address it because we brought it up last month and said we were going to address it this month.
Is there a motion or any discussion or
Should I
report?
What would
just-
the motion be?
Just restate the motion again, I guess? My same motion from last month. that we
Okay,
tabled?
motion from last month.
Okay.
Oh, Patty, sure. Mhm. No, I think,
No.
Ended by saying we weren't going to paint ourselves into a corner, and that was our fear. That's where we left it.
That we weren't going to paint ourselves into a corner about phishing emails or other things that might be necessary, but of course that would not apply to a specific district patron who emailed in and a request about him. And my motion was very specific about a district patron and a request to block that specific email from an individual.
So can you read the motion again?
Yes. A request that I moved the final condition given in the slide presentation for district-wide email filtering that was listed, which was requests, be amended to read. It used to say requests by the superintendent or the board. but I move that it be amended to read, a request from the superintendent or board will be implemented on non-commercial, non-malicious, non-phishing email messages which do not fall into any of the categories described above from district patrons. That request will be implemented only upon approval by a majority vote of the board and shall not be in effect for more than 30 days before review. Notice and opportunity for appeal will be given to all parties involved, including both the sender as well as any potential recipients. So I understand there are times when things need to be blocked because they're phishing or suspicious, but the other times it needs to not be unilateral decision. It needs to be a vote of approval of the board.
Motion by Christina. Second by Mark. Any discussion over this policy? I think we need some input from Dr. Chesick or
Procedure, not a policy.
procedure. So what are your thoughts on the procedure? As far as from our departmental standpoint?
I think that it still is written that's going to be cumbersome to IT. I think that it's not a bad idea to have some sort of procedure. I can't.
Would
get
you
on
like
that
to
one.
amend my motion to make it a more simple procedure?
I think that's how we ended it last time, because I would want IT to actually talk about how to amend it.
So can we just do that and finish this
But I think
topic?
that has to go to him, to his IT, and then he has to bring it back.
So what'd they come up with?
But
So
they didn't
what?
have it on the agenda.
We didn't
They're
have
not
it on
gonna
the
have
agenda
We
it.
can
do
put
that.
it on
So you're gonna
the
have to add it to the next one.
August
Again?
agenda.
They didn't have it
Last
on our
month, we
agenda.
said, let's table that until next
But
month
she
so
also
that they
said
can
that
go
they
and look
couldn't
that stuff
add
up.
everything on.
There were certain things that, and you said to make priorities, and we chose priorities, and this is what we had to do. And so we can talk about this again, definitely in August, but when you have 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks between meetings, and you have people on vacation, and you have people that are not in the office, that it's hard to get some of this done. It's not that we're
understand.
trying to put it off, it's just that we legitimately do not have enough time in the day to do all of this. But we will definitely put it on the agenda for August.
I just don't understand what it is that needs to be investigated anymore, because we've been talking about this for a long time. Yeah, it should be written.
A procedure would have to be written and then brought to us to approve it.
Is that what happened last month with the slide presentation? Was that not taken from a written procedure? Is there no written procedure already?
There's a policy.
Overwhelming, if to have a written procedure is the exception.
Right, there's not, the board usually does not approve the procedures.
Right. They approve policies, and then the tactical level of execution comes through the employees at a procedural level.
So we can review those procedures when needed?
Yes.
So let's review it.
There's what you're asking is the policy would be insubordination. Because what I told you last month and what I reported was, if I'm asked by my boss or a school board member, I will do what they asked. So the policy that we're looking at would be insubordination, of not doing what we're asked to do. So,
So that needs to be amended, so it's not, as we've all learned many times in all of our MSBA trainings, there's not one person who can tell you what to do.
No,
You
that-
follow the policy and the procedure. The board can vote on it as a whole, or the superintendent can tell you what to do, but if there's not, it's pretty
So
simple.
could we say, could it be changed to whether directed by the superintendent or a majority vote of the board? And not one board member?
I think it should be take out, whether directed by the superintendent. I think it should be only a
And
majority vote.
that's
of
where
the
I
board.
think there might be, I think that we're
It's
taking
a
that
district
power.
patron email. It's not a Nigerian prince asking for $1,000.
I know, but we're not thinking of every instance this could actually happen, and that's what you do when you write policy, why you have an out to it. And we also talked about if you did do that, you were going to bring it back to the board. That's the other thing she said.
And that's great to talk about and have agreement with us while we exist and we all know we're doing good things. But policy is to rein those things in, to make sure there's a fence for the future. It needs to be a written policy.
If there's a policy, kind of thinking through this a little bit, and I may be cumbersome here as I say it, because one, as a board, our employee is the superintendent, and Dr. Chesick, his boss is the superintendent. So if he's told to do something, that's what we should not circumvent that in any way. If we were to make a policy, I think the policy or procedure, again, not sure which one where we need to call it, it should be that when that's done, that should be brought to the board on why that was done. And I think that's, and that at that point can become a discussion and decision made on whatever that is. Because I think that's where part of the challenge was, if it was done and there was no communication and no one else knows what it is. But I do think we don't overstep and cross this line.
I agree with that.
Is where I think we're at, and then we can deal with it at that point, because for a lot of reasons. Because one, if this was an overstep, we need to know about it. We need to allow, you almost need to allow it to happen to be able to correct it.
So maybe we could amend it to say a request made from the superintendent or the board will be immediately notified.
Or at the next meeting. I don't think that you should. I don't think that we should tie the hands of immediately, because I think it would be at the next meeting. They would have to present it. And then if we don't agree with it, it would be undone.
I'm not trying to be stubborn, but there's room for, not with this acting superintendent, but with someone else, there's room for all kinds of egregious misconduct with that. It's easy when she sends the request, or whoever is sending the request to the IT department to block it, just carbon copy the board members on that request. I mean, that's notifying us.
But then how is that? I mean, aren't you going to want to ask questions about it? And why is this happening?
Well, sure. Then
And that's-
sometime we can make an appointment or a
Should
call
be a
or
board
something.
meeting. I mean, we could have a list of those. It looks like these were blocked.
That'd
We're
be
going to address
good.
them at the board
That'd
meeting.
be good.
And it's happened I know there's been a couple times recently. It may never happen again.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is
So I guess the new motion would say a majority of the board or the superintendent can block the email, but if a request is made, it will be presented at the next board meeting. I don't like that.
No,
good.
but if
I
a
don't like it.
request is made, it will be copied to the board members at the time.
So you're writing that in policy
and then we
versus
can talk
procedure?
about it later.
I understand that you're getting, that you're
Policy
trying to
says that
keep
one
something.
person can do, a board member can do it. And that is one thing that I do think we should probably not do without.
Is that the policy now?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I think does need to be changed.
So in August, we will bring this back with that policy and with any type of procedures that we can recommend for your approval.
Yeah.
Does that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay, okay. Do we need to vote on that? Since we have a motion and a second, do we need to vote? We're
I
going to table
I
it
think
to
we
bring
can
it back
just
to
direct it that
August.
it's brought back.
Bring
What's
it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Is
Direct
that
it,
good?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was asking. Do we need to have a motion to table?
I guess. A motion to table.
We can, sure. Let's
Sure.
do it. Yeah. Could we have a motion to table?
I-
We can
No, no,
vote
that-
and
that
just
one-
not, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, okay, well, let's vote on that first one.
I
And
don't
then
think
so-
I don't think we vote on the motion. If we're deciding to
Because we
table, we
just-
just vote
yeah.
to table.
The
Vote to
discussion-
table right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. You, okay, yeah.
If
Just
we-
because he did second it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just vote to table, right?
Yeah, just, well, do you need to pull your motion? I don't know.
But that's the motion we're tabling till now. I'm not trying to be stubborn. Gosh.
Yeah.
We just vote to table that motion. I don't withdraw it.
Okay.
Right? Am I
That's,
wrong?
that works for me.
Parliamentarian here.
Yeah.
And motion by Christina to table, and we would just need a second.
Motion to table until the August meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And second by
I'll second that.
Mark.
Just one statement.
Yeah.
I think we all recognize that this policy that we're discussing is about filtering of emails. And as a board, we do not want to filter out or block any patron from communicating with the board. Transparency is important, and it's important that we have that communication. So as a policy, we do not want to try to block anyone. And it's only in a case that it becomes either a threat to the board or a threat to computer systems as why we would want to block any
Good.
type of communication.
Yes. Thank you, Mark. Okay. And now we vote. All in favor? To table. Yes. And any opposed? And any abstentions? So unanimous vote to table. Thank you. Thank you.
Turn
Right,
live
and
stream
next we have the live stream added to the agenda. Yes, turning live stream into archive was a recent addition as well. So we can start with Christy. Want to go ahead with that
So
motion?
I move that the live stream broadcast that we do for the public to be able to watch at the time the meeting is happening be archived and stored for later viewing by any interested district patron. And that's the end of my motion because I know it's too long. But I would speak in favor of that motion. I sent you guys an email giving the examples of the many different places that do that, different school districts and the way they store it. They store it on YouTube, they store it on Vimeo, they store it on something on their own website that I couldn't figure out really what that was, but I'm not in charge of that tech stuff. So, and like Dr. Baumann had mentioned at the last meeting, the District Board of Education would be the example we would want to follow. And the District Board of Education meetings are archived on DESI's website. And the closed captioning is on there. It's auto-generated. Every district I looked at, the closed captioning was auto-generated. And they're not edited. So there's no extra expense. Just like Ozark did with the high school recognition, and we archived that, it's still on there. We could do the same thing with our board meetings. Yes. Yes. We've talked
I
about it
have
for a
the
long
motion
time.
that live stream broadcast be archived and stored for later viewing by interested patron. That was the motions you made.
Yes.
I have you can go ahead. I have a question to the motion, and just recalling when we discussed it last month, weren't we supposed to check into a cost and how it works and how you can do that and let us know that?
And I know that they were already working on this.
We had we've had two meetings. We went back and looked at the previous, if we go to the previous example that we had with YouTube, it was unintentionally archiving it. We can turn that feature back on at zero cost. Now, the addition is, and this is, there's depending on how liable we want to be, the accuracy of the closed captioning is important because several years ago, there were several Americans with Disabilities Act lawsuits filed, which required a lot of changes to websites or school districts. So one of those disabilities is that is provided. So at no cost it provides it, but I would warn the board, it's my duty to protect, and I would warn the board that we should at least have somebody review that. That's probably there's no additional cost, but there's an opportunity cost of what that employee was going to do instead of watching that. But just to limit our liability, I would definitely, if it's a 3-hour board meeting, that would require an employee to watch it for 3 hours. And I mean, you're clearly any misleading information, any expletives, I mean, anything that, helped the Americans with Disability Act lawsuits and liability as well. In the closed captioning. Right, and that was we went to the ISTE conference and the latest and greatest technology, and you're watching it happen live, and you're just kind of laughing at what's happening because what's being put on there is not what is actually being said. So we would want to make it, one, reflective, two, to be in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and make sure that we're providing for our hearing or visually impaired an opportunity to hear it.
I would second that. I'm just going to put it, I would second that motion that we just do it.
Thank you.
Is there ability to edit the closed captioning?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, you can watch it and then edit it, so
And then we have to keep them for a year, right?
whatever we decide.
Well, I believe that the statute said we have to keep them for a year, and then there's nothing that says we have to keep them after that. So I would second that motion, saying that we, barring that I don't think there's going to be a cost. We surely have the storage, and we can surely start having review of that. And I think we do it because I think we should.
People want it.
There is a cost to the employee.
Right. But I still think we do it.
And honestly, like Dr. Baumann mentioned, the State Board of Education would be our perfect example to look at. They don't have anybody go through and edit it. If you watch it, you can see on the closed captioning, it's not all that accurate. Our minutes are the official stuff that has to really be there. The other stuff is just, you know, it's helpful, it's nice, but they're not what have to be there.
But if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right.
Well, I would want it to be accurate. I mean, we should, I would still think that it's minimal and we should do it.
Okay.
It has to be a year.
Yep. And Springfield keeps theirs for like 3 or 4 or 5 years. You can go back and see them for a long time.
I
But
do.
Can I add to it? Say, make sure
You can
that we
amend it,
include in that, amend it to say we archive for a year.
And I can tell you, we have no problems with that, with this motion at all. We don't, there's no argument from us on doing this. None.
I mean, I think that the liability is small, but what people are asking us to do,
Sure.
we can't always be here at this time. It's
Right,
important that they be
good.
able to view them too.
Yes. And that adds to what Mark was talking about with accountability and transparency. Did you say for a year, or did you say for at least a year to match the law?
I would say for 8 years.
Okay, just checking.
And I do enjoy watching school board meetings on YouTube and city council. I have to admit, I do enjoy that with other school districts. So we do have a motion. Is that right? Or do we, and a second? So we
And
can vote?
Can I clarify on the motion?
Yes.
Motion states that live stream broadcast will be archived and stored up to a year for later viewing by interested patrons.
Thank you.
Yep,
For
up
a
to a
year.
year. Yep,
Perfect. He said
Okay.
for a year, yes.
Yeah.
Amber second.
Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
So are we saying general board meetings? I mean, because once we do the long range planning meetings, those would be
Everything. that
board
we Zoom.
meetings as well. Yeah, so
I would say official board meetings.
And
would
special
start
board meeting, anything that we Zoom.
I would say that we start with the official board meetings.
Open session official board meetings.
And that,
Okay.
would include like tonight, even though tonight's not a regular board meeting, it's a special one. 'Cause-
yeah,
But
but-
anything,
yes.
anything that we
It's an
Zoom.
official board meeting.
Right, good, yeah. So do we need to have to amend that
No, I
to
think
be,
it says on there. official,
okay,
I mean,
the live stream?
board meeting.
Okay. Thank you for taking notes, Dr. Carson.
Yes. thank
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
you. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Are we on new business now? Okay.
I think we are.
Yep. Review and approve financing of ESCO projects. Dr. Chesick? Joe again.
Joe's
Oh,
coming.
Mr. Kinder.
Just as a reminder, though, you did approve us to go ahead with ESCO pending financing.
Yeah.
So Mr. Kinder is here to report those numbers to you and what it looks like and how we can move forward.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me back again here. And again, if you want me to fast forward to the bullet points, let me know. But energy contracts, performance contracts, carry a special designation within the state of Missouri for public taxing entities. And I want to talk a little bit about the structure that we came to and the why of essentially the options we're presenting you. So when you go out and do a performance contract within the state of Missouri, that is a contract that results in energy savings that will pay the principal and interest on the financing itself. That is essentially the definition. There's a little bit of flexibility to do stuff within that, But if we're trying to fall within the statute, really the only benefit that the statute that outlines these projects has to you all is what's called a free transfer. So we pay any debt out of our operating capital that would be a lease debt out of our capital projects fund or fund 4. We have a limited number of ways to get money into your capital projects fund. So if you do a performance contract, and if you borrow in that performance contract for less than 15 years and it pays for itself, you are allowed that free transfer. The reality of that is, for most performance contracts, if we structure things that way, you will lose money for 8, 9, 10 years and then gain money for 5, 6 years and end up in the positive. So we don't often, as school districts in Missouri, elect to use that statute. That does not preclude you from getting guaranteed energy savings from your performance contractor. So on the other side of that, the contract that you have with your contractor, you can get guaranteed energy savings. We don't typically in Missouri designate that statute for our borrowing purposes. So one thing you need to be really careful of, and I don't foresee that being a problem because you're big enough and you have a big enough budget. You need to be able to make sure that you've got ways, whether it's through your classroom trust fund allocation that can go into Fund 4, whether it's through your 7% transfer, or whether it's through parking some revenue in Fund 4. We need to make sure we have a way to pay for that, because the plans that we're presenting in front of you do not contemplate that free transfer from 1 to 4. So any other projects you're planning to do that year need to have money over there as well. So you need to get the lease payments over there, and then whatever your budget is for projects. So that's just something to keep in mind. You don't just have this free ability under these scenarios. Now, if you want us to go back and look at that, we can, but certainly there are some other things that you're capitalizing on here, and we want to make sure we're giving you options to be cognizant of that. The first of which is the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, right? You've got some great incentives going on right now. We don't, and this is not Joe Kinder speaking, this is what I've heard from performance contractors. We know that the money is guaranteed till through December 31st. We don't know what's going to have to happen after that. So we want to make sure as a public entity, we're taking advantage. If we're going to do projects, we're taking advantage of those benefits from the federal government. So we're in a bit of a time crunch in terms of taking advantage of those projects. And I know also you've got a bunch of other projects you need to get done, particularly on your operating systems within your physical plant. So trying to get those up, keep those up and running, get them all in one uniform system. So there's some parts of this project that aren't necessarily saving money, but this is something we do a lot. And actually I was just in Clinton last night talking about almost the exact same deal that you all are doing. They were able to add some solar into their project and do some other fun stuff, do some roofing projects with their savings and not come out of pocket. So essentially what we're doing is banking on savings in the future, which there is a discussion that you all should have about how confident you can be in that versus your payments, right? And so the savings report that they had versus the payment report that we had matched up, and they were able to get about another $800,000 or $900,000 done, which for them on a $2 million project that grew to $3 million, that was significant, 33% increase. And then they knocked some things off the list that they otherwise would have to do in cash, right? The other challenge that you all have, so you've got that idea, but the other challenge you have being a bedroom community is when we go out to borrow money on general obligation bond debt, those no tax increase bond issues I mentioned earlier, we are capped at 15% of your assessed value less your existing outstanding debt, the principal on the existing outstanding debt. What that means when you're a bedroom community or when you have a lot of rooftops is homes are assessed at 19% of their market value. And their market value isn't going to be as high as a business anyway. Businesses just carry more market value the way that Missouri assesses it because of the capital that flows through those businesses. So when you are largely rooftops and homes, you do not have a lot of bonding capacity relative to the space needs that you have. So we always want to be cognizant of trying not to encumber bond funds, except unless you're ready to do those larger capital outlays, those larger building projects, adding spaces, doing projects like this, or like the early childhood, things like that, where we're doing big projects that are moving the needle, right? So with that, we want to take advantage of those savings as well to be able to do some stuff. As we look at this, we've looked at this a bunch of different ways. I'm going to narrow it down to, I'm really going to focus on the larger project that we were given, the $14.8 million. If you have questions about the smaller project, we've got those numbers for you, but I'm going to focus on kind of the 3 different ways we looked at this. The first was just a straight up financing of the projects in a 20-year timeline, so longer than the 15 years, but not out past the warranty for most of this equipment. One thing we don't want to be doing when we're buying equipment is paying on it past the useful life of that equipment, right? So there's a balance there. We can go past the 15 years, but we don't want to go 25 years. 25 is as long as we could go in Missouri. I presented that scenario, or you have that scenario in front of you, but that's not necessarily a good thing because that's 5 years worth of paying as systems that may be failing. You may be replacing systems that you're still paying on, right? So we want to be a little bit careful there, but we did want to try to do the best we could to cash flow this thing. So on the larger project, if we just do a 20-year financing, keeps you within warranty, you're losing about $2.7 million debt service versus energy cost savings to do all those projects over that 20-year period. So, you know, something in the realm of $60,000 or $130,000 a year, sorry, $130,000 a year. So you'd have to come out of operating capital. You'd have to find other means to finance that. If we got 25 years, that becomes something more like a $600,000 loss. Now, part of the 25-year analysis is extrapolating 5 more years worth of energy cost savings that may not be there, but it just allows us, by going out longer, it allows us to, on an annualized basis, so on the budgets that you approve 1 year at a time, to shrink those deficits to as small as we could get them to. So those would be something in the range of, you know, $20,000 to $30,000 a year. Okay. The other way that we can look at this is a reallocation of revenue that you've already decided to spend in this given calendar year, or in this budget year. Yes. So essentially, you already have existing lease debt. Some of it was intended to purchase this building, and actually the vast majority of it. The rest of it was originally ties back to the high school and some other energy projects you've done. So we're just about done paying on the high school. And so when we look at your annual lease purchase payment, or your existing lease debt service, which is 3 columns in from the right, for the next 4 fiscal years, your payments are about $900,000. Those are lease payments that you have already committed to that you need to make. Now, this is annual appropriation debt. What that means is you still appropriate that on an annual basis, but you would lose access to your facilities till the end of the lease if you decided not to make a payment, which would be likely 30 years. So you want to make those payments. But you are already currently allocating that money, and that is within your current budget. So if we take that as a line item and just say, okay, let's plug and play, not even 900,000, we looked at 800,000. We're just going to dedicate $800,000 of our budget to lease payments for improvements, because quite frankly, we're paying 900 now, and this is going to make this cash flow for us. I mean, there's no other way to say that, right? But so if we take those payments and capitalize on the fact that you've got a drop in payments coming up, plus this federal grant money of almost $4 million that's available to you all according to the performance contractors, we get to a scenario where you can actually essentially lower your capital outlay by $100,000, fictional though that may be, and end up positive over $3 million. So not pay any more in terms of what you're actually allocating out of this current fiscal year budget, fiscal 24, and still end up ahead on this thing. So again, just to be clear, this is not, we haven't changed anything around or given you a magical interest rate. You know, our job is to auction off this debt, if it's $14.8 million in $5,000 increments, to those investors willing to pay the highest price, which for you all means the lowest yield. So on that day, we are going to get you the lowest possible interest rate you can get on this. So there's no funny money. We're being conservative with our interest rates here, we think. But this is a way that you can say, from a status quo perspective of this year's budget, we will allocate less in the future, and hopefully our revenues will grow over time simply because, you know, money gets less valuable over time. And so that will become less and less important, but that we will actually end up in a positive position relative to that look at your revenue, so that you can get these projects done and start saving money, stop spending all this money trying to keep your systems running that are close to failure or beyond failure, and get you caught up a little bit here on some of that deferred maintenance along with those energy cost savings, and use $4 million of the federal dollars that are already out there that we can't do anything to undo if you don't grab it. So might as well take advantage of that while you're there. Those are the 3 options. The plan would be, you know, so that you can move forward on your actual projects, that we would come back next month if you've got honed in on stuff, or talk options maybe over a longer period of time and talk about the different ways we could structure that. But this one, to me, makes the most sense in terms of trying to allocate your budget and understand what's happening with these improvements. And it saves you bonding capacity. You know, if you were to try to do these projects with bond money, obviously then that dedicated those energy cost savings there of around starting at 500,000 and going up, of what, $16 million, over $16 million in energy cost savings would all accrue, but then you would lose that $14.8 million of bonding capacity, which is, significant in terms of the classroom space you could do with that. So trying to balance a lot of stuff and help you get this project done. But again, we can talk about the lower set of projects, or you don't have to do the projects at all, but just wanted to try to help ideate and create options for you all.
I'd like to point out that we felt it was important to bring Joe in to present this, one, because it's very complicated. Two, when the presentation was made last month, they were using numbers that was, if you're looking at numbers like, hey, this went up. They were using numbers that interest rate that was when they first started the program, and interest rate has gone up since then. So that's the difference. The overall cost has not changed. It's the interest rate that has gone up over the past few months that's made the change.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for clarifying that.
And with this scenario, because I'm trying to think of how much eventually am I going to have to cash flow allocate? And with this, we have lease payments dropping down. You can see the difference between the 892 and the 476 on the third column. That's dropping off. Well, I know in my head, just like I'm budgeting for my car and I need a new car, I have this much that I'm allocating every year. Well, if I get a new car, I want to allocate that same amount. So it is extending it, but it is not necessarily increasing it.
It's increasing the overall total amount, but not the monthly.
Yes,
outgo.
absolutely.
It does not change the $2.7 million overall additional capital outlay versus the savings. You are correct. It's
For
just
the needed repairs.
looking at it a different way. Right.
Yeah, for the needed repairs.
We are still good.
Still good. Right, we're good. And
And
go
we
ahead
would-
and do all these projects that we agreed on last month.
Yes.
And we would time that out so you wouldn't make a payment in this fiscal year to allow you to get all those systems online and start saving money. So one thing we don't want to do is have you make a big payment in year one and not have any systems online, because then you're coming out of pocket right away. And that's what we were trying to avoid.
Is there a time ending where you can recoup the federal monies that they're going to, the 4 million? Are we?
There is, and I'm speaking what has been relayed to me. So there is a period of time that we are guaranteed that it's going to be there. Beyond that, we don't have the guarantee that those funds will continue to be there. So we know that we will have until the end of this year to claim that, but beyond that, we don't know.
So how are those funds distributed? Those grant funds distributed, are they distributed all at once, or?
So at the end of the project. So hold it. So if you look on 2026, that's at rebates and grants received. That's when we would get that to turn that in.
But if we apply for it this year, we're for sure getting it.
That's what we've been told.
Yeah, they will. The federal government will only reimburse you for cost incurred. They won't provide you the money up front.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, reimbursement.
So, and that's, some of that is from Liberty as well. They have rebates for LEDs. So they're grants, but it's unlike, I don't want to throw salt on Kim there, but unlike some grants that seem like a guarantee, they're not a guarantee, right? There's criteria that's hidden. These are guarantees. They're federal mandates, and then the Liberty has their own mandate.
And there's still the same guarantee about guaranteed cost savings. If
Yes.
the energy doesn't turn out to be the same, they make that up.
If we vote to agree on this tonight, the plan that's this one, how quickly can we start moving on the project?
So we are very fortunate. When I say we are very fortunate, I have negotiated too many contracts to count. Our attorney and their attorneys have almost come to a consensus. We have one more opportunity to get together. If you approve to give me the opportunity to finalize contracts, I could have more than likely Jason Dial and I can finish that up Thursday.
costs incurred related to the projects until we would close, you can reimburse your general fund for. So even you can start spending money today and be able to reimburse yourself when the funds come in from the lease, so that you're not out any budgeted money this year.
And we do that currently with the lease that we have now, that we will pay and then be reimbursed immediately almost within 24 hours.
I'd like to make a motion for the third option, to do this for this project for ESCO, and to allow Dr. Chesick to do the last financial drawings of it, finalize the contract.
Thank you. Motion by Patty,
I'll second it.
second by Amber. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Kinder.
Next month to bring the rates, but the money that we would like for this to work, close it after the 1st of October. That would allow us to not do the first fiscal year. If that interest rate risk over that time concerns you, that would be the plan. So October 2nd, we're taking that money available, anything you spend, we get reimbursed. That way we don't make a payment. No penalty for it, it just allows us to.
You like that?
For sure.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here tonight. Safe travels. Thank you.
Comedic or light note, I would like to point out that I've been in the high school several times, and just out of spite, that stupid machine just keeps running all summer.
Yeah.
Like it knows it's going away. And it's like, I'm not going down.
Well, that's good. That's what we want, right?
Tomorrow it'll be.
Yeah, right as school starts.
Okay. And next, we just need to discuss the change in board meeting times. Our August meeting is set for August 24th, and that is the same night as Meet the Tigers event. And some of our board members have kids included in that event. Last year, we met at the Ozark High School Library and met a little bit earlier to accommodate that. Would we like to do that again this year, or just the time and day again and location?
I would like to adjust today. I know we did that last year, but I think we still went long, and I don't know that we got out in time to really
I didn't get out over there.
get
to
out in
watch
time
it.
to get there.
No, we
We
didn't.
did.
To enjoy it.
Maybe we could put it on the Tuesday instead of the
Sure.
Thursday that week. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
What everybody's
Everybody
schedule is
August
like.
22nd.
I know that's moving a board night that we've already set, but I think this is needed so we can be there for our students and our coaches and everything.
Yeah. What do you guys think about that? Will that work?
Will August 22nd work for everybody?
the
I don't- there's
29th,
nothing-
I don't
it's
know.
Nothing on our calendar.
Second day of school, I think we'll be fine.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
Oh. Should it be the 29th
Oh, no.
instead?
No, it'll be fine.
No, it'll
Oh.
be
It'll be
fine.
fine.
Fine, yeah.
I would prefer the 22nd, just in case something happens with the tax rate hearing.
Oh, good.
You know,
yeah.
some like a, I don't know, anomaly, and then we still have a few that we'd have, if we would have to come back to the board again, which I don't expect it to happen, but there's also, I would like to have a few days there.
Okay, so
What
Sounds
day
good.
is it going to be?
No, but we will.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to do it 2 weeks prior.
What time?
August 22nd at 5 p.m.
Is that for closed session?
for closed session.
We had said we were, oh.
Yeah,
okay.
and then
the
7
open
o'clock
session
for
started
open.
at
Yeah.
7. Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay,
do we need a motion on that?
go ahead.
Okay.
Make a motion that we move the August board meeting from the 24th to the 22nd, Tuesday, the 22nd of August.
Motion by Patty. So, yeah, are we
Yes.
meeting here in
Yes.
August? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same time, at 5 o'clock for closed, 7 o'clock open here in the OIC.
Yes.
I thought Jamie was
I'll
voting
second.
here. I thought you were voting.
Do we need to set the menu?
Okay. Yeah, motion by Patty, second by Amber. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Yeah.
We'll change it on the calendar.
I want to say thank you so much for making those times. I've been told so many times, I'm not saying thank you for me, I'm saying thank you for the people who tell me. It helps so much for them to always be at 7, not at 3 or 4 or 5 or I guess, but it makes a big difference. Thank you for doing that. Yep.
And then we just need a motion to adjourn. I think, is that everything for tonight? Okay. Thank you all for being here. And thank you all. Motion by Mark, second by Patty. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good night, everybody. Safe travels.
Thank you.